Y'all are really letting another woman play wife in here and calling it help. Tinka said it to the whole table, and nobody answered her. A second earlier, Lacey had walked straight out of Nia's kitchen holding Evan's usual lowball glass. Eyes clicking, smile soft, and set it by his elbow like she belonged to the habit. Dana saw it, approved it with a look. Evan took the drink. A couple relatives noticed and dropped their eyes back to their plates. Nia didn't move. She just sat there at her own table so still the room felt colder around her. Then Dana reached for the pie server without touching the real problem. Lacey has been nothing but gracious, she said. Some people are simply trying to help. We don't need to make everything so heavy. The glass stayed right there by Evan's hand, and somehow every eye in the room moved off it and landed on Nia. Wine glasses were still stacked by the sink when Evan reached toward Nia with another empty platter. Like the rest of the night belonged to her hands. She had her coat on already, her structured toe pulled at one shoulder, and a crinkled pharmacy bag hung from the other. He was still warm from that little public glow, still smiling, still moving through the room like what he just said about her was enough. Babe, can you just... Nia set the serving tray down before he finished. She picked up her keys off the counter and said, I have to get my father's prescription before they close. That was all. No soft laugh. No sorry. No extra explanation to make it easier on him. Garrett stopped with his mouth half open. Lacey went quiet with a towel in her hand. A couple by the island looked at Evan, then at the mess still spread across the kitchen and living room. He waited like she might turn around and finish anyway. She didn't. She walked past the stacked glasses, past his reaching hand, and out the front door. The whole house felt unheld the second she left. The front door had barely shut before Lacey slid into motion. She stepped around the island in those soft neutral clothes like a lane had opened just for her. I can get this, she said, light and easy, already pulling foil over Nia's serving bowl. Then she kept going, leftovers into containers, counter wiped down, to-go plates stacked. When somebody asked where to leave the extra wine bottles, Lacey answered before Evan did, like she already knew how this house worked. Evan let her. That was the ugly part. He didn't correct it, didn't say it was late, didn't say leave that alone. He just stood there looking relieved. Garrett smirked into his beer. One guest paused with a serving spoon in her hand, like maybe this was a little familiar, then decided not to make it awkward. So Lacey kept moving in Nia's kitchen with Nia's dishes. Like usefulness could make trespass look sweet. Nobody had to say Nia's place was open. They were acting like it. By the time Nia got to Leon's apartment, her feet hurt and her makeup was half gone. She was still in the same clothes from the gathering, earrings still on, purse on one chair, pharmacy bag on the table, phone lighting up every few seconds beside the pill organizer. Evan, again. She turned the phone face down and started sorting Leon's evening meds. Then she pulled out her card and paid the higher copay without saying much. Just waited for the receipt and tucked it under the pharmacy bag. Leon watched all of it, the buzzing phone, the tired way she moved. The fact that she was standing in his kitchen late at night when she should have been home. You didn't have to rush over here, he said. That can wait. No, it can't. It came out sharper than she meant. Nia closed her eyes for a beat, then looked at him and softened. Go ahead and eat, Daddy. Take these with food. He stopped arguing after that. Her phone kept vibrating against the table. She never reached for it. Morning had that stale, too little sleep look to it. Mail spread across the counter. 2 mugs in the sink, the prescription bag from the night before slumped beside her work folders. Nia was making coffee one-handed, trying to pack her lunch with the other. When Evan started in behind her, you didn't have to make a scene, he said. She moved from the sink to the counter. He moved with her. I thanked you. People were looking at me like I did something wrong. He said it in that low, polished voice he used when he wanted his version to sound like the adult one, like she had mishandled a nice moment. Like leaving to get her father's medicine was the rude part. Nia picked up the pharmacy receipt and smoothed the edge with her thumb. You thank me like staff. Her voice came out thinner than she wanted. Evan barely paused. That's not what I meant, and you know it. You could have talked to me instead of embarrassing me in front of everybody. He kept following her while she worked. Didn't pour the coffee. Didn't touch the lunch container. Just stayed on her shoulder, trying to pin the night down before she could name it differently. Nia slid the receipt into her tote. I'm not agreeing to your version before work. The speakerphone was already on the counter when Nia started packing the second lunch. Leon's appointment papers were under one hand. Leftovers were open on the other side. Evan stood close enough to shut the call off if he wanted to, but he didn't. He let his mother speak right into the kitchen like Nia wasn't standing there hearing every word. Dana's voice came through sweet and careful. I think everybody was tired. Evan was trying to say something kind. Sometimes when we're stressed, we hear things harsher than they were meant. Evan's shoulders loosened a little. Nia went still with the container in her hand. Dana never asked what he actually said. Never asked why Nia left. She just kept praising Evan for trying and gently folding the whole thing into one of those little verdicts about how decent people don't stretch an awkward moment into family drama. The answer rose up fast in Nia's throat. She almost gave it to her. But the clock on the stove kept moving, and being late to work wasn't going to hurt Dana or Evan. So she packed the lunch in silence and let his mother finish making him sound reasonable. By lunchtime, Nia had gotten herself back into payroll mode. Numbers, deadlines, people who needed clear answers, not little emotional traps. Then the receptionist looked up and said, "You have someone here." Lacey was standing in the lobby with Nia's serving bowl tucked against her hip, like it belonged there, smiling, fresh, comfortable. She signed the clipboard, then carried the bowl over herself instead of leaving it at the desk. "Evan asked if I could drop this by," she said. "He couldn't get away." Nia didn't move right off. Lacey gave a soft little laugh and kept going. "We were there forever after you left, just getting everything put away. But we got it all handled." A woman at the front desk stopped typing. One of the guys from shipping slowed down as he passed and then kept walking, like he hadn't heard a thing. There it was. Nia's house, Nia's dishes, Nia's marriage mess, carried right into the middle of her workday by a woman acting like she was doing something sweet. The heat rose behind Nia's eyes, and she had to decide right there whether to let that smile tell the story for her. Nia stepped forward and took the bowl by the rim, careful not to brush Lacey's fingers. "Thanks," she said. Her voice was flat now, steady. "Anything from my house can go through Evan next time." Lacey blinked, then gave that airy laugh again. "Oh, sure, I just didn't mind." Nia kept the bowl in both hands. Through Evan. That was it. No speech. No asking what Lacey meant. No giving her room to act confused and settle in deeper. The receptionist went quiet behind the desk. Even the phone seemed louder for a second. Lacey's smile held a beat along. "Okay," she said. But it came out thinner this time. Nia nodded once, turned, and walked the bowl out of the lobby like she was carrying back a piece of ground somebody had stepped on without permission. When she reached her desk, her hand was still steady. Her chest wasn't. The bowl rode in the passenger seat until Nia met Tinka in a parking lot between errands. Tinka still had her transit badge on, hair pulled back, face already set like she didn't have time for anybody's nonsense. Nia tried to make it sound smaller than it felt. "She just brought my dish up to the office," she said. Evan asked her to. Tinka leaned in through the open window, looked at the bowl, and picked it up by the edge. "No, another woman cleaned up in your house, brought your stuff to your job, and smiled in your face because everybody thinks you'll swallow it." Nia's head came back a little. "It wasn't what?" Tinka asked. "Embarrassing, disrespectful, public." Nia looked away toward the next row of cars. For a second she got mad just because the words were so blunt, because plain truth always sounded harsher than the little polite version she'd been feeding herself. Tinka set the bowl back on the seat between them. Nia didn't offend it again. The phone lit up under a stack of grocery flyers just as Nia set the last bag on the counter. She glanced down, then stopped moving. The mortgage draft was due to hit before the weekend, and the balance sitting in the account was not enough. Not close enough to play with. She looked at the date again, then at the groceries still half unpacked, then at Evan drifting through the kitchen like it was any other evening. He opened a cabinet, reached for a snack, and started tearing the wrapper like nothing in the room had changed. Nia held the phone out. "Did you see this?" He looked. "Yeah, I figured you'd move something over." That was it. No apology. No "I forgot." Just that easy, settled assumption that she would catch the drop before it became a real problem. Her eyes stunned. She blinked hard and set the phone beside the bread and mail. "You figured I'd handle it," she said. Evan shrugged like they were talking about paper towels. Nia went still. For once, she didn't reach for the transfer right away. She was still standing there with the phone in her hand when Evan picked up his and called Dana. He slipped on his watch, leaned against the counter like the mortgage scare hadn't just landed, and said, "Sunday at ours works." Nia turned so fast, one of the grocery bags cut deeper into her fingers. Dana's voice came right through the phone. Perfect. I can do the roast. If Nia handles the sides, we'll be fine. What time should everyone come? Evan started answering like the decision had already been discussed, already agreed to, already moved from his mouth into her weekend. Noon sounded good, maybe a little earlier for Dana. Yes, of course there'd be room. Yes, of course they'd do it here. Nia set the grocery bag down hard enough to make the cans inside knock together. He looked over at her then, but only for a beat. One hand still over the phone like this was some small thing she could catch up to later. Dana kept talking about dessert and serving dishes. Nia was standing in her own kitchen listening to her labor get volunteered in real time. The speakerphone sat on the kitchen table between a salt shaker and Leon's appointment reminder card, like it belonged. There, Dana was already halfway into Sunday talk. What should people bring? What time should everybody come? With the roast fit in Nia's good dish. Evan leaned against the counter listening like the plan had finished itself. Nia picked up the appointment card and turned it over once in her fingers. Then she said, I'm not cooking on Sunday. I'm not setting the house up around a plan nobody asked me about. I'd have Daddy's care, and I have my own work. The line went quiet. Evan pushed off the counter. Nia, she kept going, softer now, but not backing off. I already have enough. Her voice shook on that last part. Just once. Dana came back clipped and cool. Well, that's disappointing. Nia didn't fill the silence for her. She didn't explain herself down into something more acceptable. Evan looked like he expected her to catch the whole thing and smooth it over before it landed. She left it there instead. Dinner was takeout from cartons again. Leon's pill organizer sat on the table beside the soy sauce packets, and Nia had her father on speaker while she checked the next day's timing. Your ride's set for 10:30, she said. I'll call when I'm on the way. Leon gave a little grunt of approval. Then, in that plain, old-school voice of his, he said, all right. Thank you, baby, for lining up the ride, getting the refill, all of it. You're the one who knows what's what over here. Nia didn't answer right away. Evan was close enough to hear every word, close enough to step into it. If he had something to say, why he didn't. He just sat there with his food and nowhere smooth to go. Leon kept talking about copays and timing, but that one piece had already landed. Not praise, not a speech, just simple fact. Nia looked down at the pill case by her elbow and said, I got it, Daddy. It should have felt good. It did, and it hurt too. Hearing out loud how normal it had become for everybody to live inside what she kept track of. Later that night, Evan left a fresh list on the counter. Sunday, ice, extra drinks, towels in the guest bath, pick up dessert, get the good serving pieces down. He had even written arrival times down the side like that turned it into a shared plan, instead of another assignment. Slid into her lane. Nia came in with her toast still on shoulder and saw it waiting there under the kitchen light. Evan tapped the page with 2 fingers. At least look at it so we're scrambling tomorrow. She stood there long enough to read the first few lines, long enough to feel her own brain start doing what it always did, sorting, timing, calculating what store was latest and what could be handled first. Then she picked up her keys. Evan waited. She didn't touch the list, didn't move the pen, didn't answer the assignment hidden inside his voice. She walked out of the kitchen with the toast still on her shoulder and left the paper exactly where he left it. The page stayed flat on the counter. Nothing else moved. The handwritten list was still on the counter Saturday morning. Wedged between grocery ads and Leon's medication bag, nothing else had moved. No extra towels pulled for the guest bath. No drinks chilling. No quiet signs that Nia had already been up early. Thinking 3 steps ahead for everybody, Evan came into the kitchen, looked around, and frowned like the room had let him down. Where are the groceries? He asked. You didn't do the towels. What about getting everything set up? Nia picked up her structured tote. Then she took Leon's pill bag in the same hand. None of it's done, she said. He blinked at her. What do you mean none of it's done? She didn't give him the whole history. Didn't remind him whose idea Sunday was. Didn't explain how little sleep she'd had. I have to go get my father. That was all. She walked out before he could turn the morning into smaller assignments. When the door shut behind her, Evan was left standing over that untouched list, staring at it like paper by itself should have made the weekend happen. Dana called while Nia was outside the medical office getting Leon settled back in the car. His cane rested across his knees. Her phone buzzed against the console. Then again, when she finally answered. She put it on speaker because both her hands were busy. Dana's voice came on brisk and familiar. What should I bring tomorrow? At what time do you want everyone there? Nia shut Leon's door, leaned against the car for one beat, and said, Evan invited everybody. Coordinate with Evan. Silence. Dana came back sharper. I was asking you. Nia looked through the windshield at the waiting room doors and kept her voice even. He made the plan. Ask him what time people should come. Leon gave the smallest nod from the seat. Not dramatic. Just enough. Dana went clipped and careful after that. All right. Nia ended the call and set the phone down. For once, the work of gathering everybody up was headed back toward the person who had volunteered her house in the first place. Leon was halfway into the car outside clinic when Evan pulled up with a wholesale flyer and a short shopping list in his hand. Nia had one arm under her father's elbow and the other bracing the car door. She was focused on getting him seated without him twisting wrong. Evan came straight over anyway and held the list out. Can you swing by the bulk store? He said. You know what my mom likes. We still need drinks and a few things. Nia looked at the paper, then at Leon. No. He kept the list there. Like maybe she just needed a second to come back to herself and start helping again. It won't take long. Leon stayed quiet, caught right there in it. Nia bent, guided him fully into the seat, pulled the belt across him, and shut the door. Then she faced Evan. I said no. The list stayed in his hand. His face tightened. Not like somebody in real trouble, but like somebody who had expected her day to open up around his needs, no matter what else was happening. Nia got in the car and left him there with his errands. The handoff happened in a transit lot with buses hissing in the distance, and Leon's walker coming out of the trunk. Tamka pulled up still in her work jacket, stepped out, and took the walker without ceremony. She moved like a woman who did not have time for anybody's little marital dance. Evan was still standing there, still trying. So you're really not coming back to help with the house? Nia had her tax folder tucked under her arm. She tightened her grip on it. I have clients. He let out a breath through his nose. Nia, come on. Tamka took Leon's elbow and said, plain as day. Then he can figure out the dinner he invited people to. Leon looked between them, and that old guilt hit Nia so hard she almost opened her mouth to soften things. She didn't. She kissed her father on the cheek, told Tamka she'd call later, and stepped back. Nobody was asking Evan to miss paid work for this. Nobody was treating his time like spare change. Nia turned and headed for her tax shift, folder under her arm, before the guilt could drag her back. By the time Nia was gone, the house looked wrong. Folding chairs were stacked against the wall. Grocery bags sat in the middle of the kitchen floor. Cabinet doors hung open where somebody had started searching and never bothered to close anything back. Garrett was in the middle of it with a chair over one shoulder, moving through the place like it belonged to every man who knew Evan well enough. Evan had him shifting furniture, checking closets, opening drawers, poking through cabinets for serving pieces and extra glasses. Garrett laughed once and said, Man, this place is unsupervised. Evan didn't correct him. That was the ugliness of it. Not just that Evan needed help. That instead of admitting how much Nia normally handled, he brought another man into her space and let him treat the house like a public setup job. Garrett kept rummaging. Where does she keep the good stuff? He said it casually, like her systems were just there for them to crack open. The house was already starting to look picked over, and neither one of them seemed to understand that comfort had always arrived there. Wearing Nia's hands, the phone was already on speaker by the time Nia stepped into the break area. Fluorescent light overhead, 10 minutes between tax clients, and Garrett's voice spilling out of her phone like he belonged in her ear, as much as he did in her kitchen. So y'all really left us unsupervised over here, he said, laughing. Where are the real dishes? Some cabinet slammed in the background. Evan came in next, sharper. Nia, where are the serving pieces? The actual ones, and the better glasses? A co-worker at the far table glanced up. Nia looked at the clock on the wall, then at the phone in her hand. They did not just want to know where something was. They wanted her voice, her instructions, her way of making their mess feel less embarrassing. Use what you bought, she said. Evan started in again. Can you just use what you bought? She ended the call. The silence hit hard. Her fingers trembled after, because somewhere in her body, hanging up still felt ruder than their entitlement did. Dana arrived early carrying a covered pie dish in both hands. She stepped into the foyer and paused long enough to take in the half-set table. The chair's still not quite right. The kitchen traffic that said people had been busy without actually getting anywhere. Then her eyes passed right over Evan. They landed on Nia. I assumed we'd be a little further along by now, Dana said, her voice soft and polished like she was making an observation instead of laying blame. The heat flashed up Nia's chest so fast it almost made her dizzy. Her own doorway, her own house, and still the mess got handed to her first. Garrett was near the counter. Evan was close enough to hear every word. Nia kept her face still. Evan is handling Sunday. Dana's smile held, but only barely. I was just saying. Then take it up with Evan. Silence sat down in the room. Garrett looked away. Evan had to stand there and wear the discomfort himself for once. Dana drew the pie dish a little closer to her body, then finally turned to her son. By the time Nia got back, the kitchen counter was buried under utility mail, store receipts, and open pockets of her tote. Her cash envelope was in Evan's hand. He already had the flap open. Garrett's running back out. He said, like this was ordinary. We just need cash for ice and a few extras. He was reaching the envelope toward Garrett when Nia stepped in and took it back. Fast. No, Evan blinked. Nia, it's just for dinner. It's my client money, she said. Her voice came out flatter than his. Harder. Do not use my client money for your dinner. Garrett, keys in hand, went awkwardly quiet. Dana stood there with that fixed, polite face and suddenly had nowhere to put it. Nobody could call this family teamwork now. Because Evan had not asked to borrow anything. He had taken it. Nia folded the envelope once, slid it back into her tote, and closed the zipper with her whole hand wrapped around it. The doorbell rang while that silence was still hanging in the kitchen. When Nia opened the door, Lacey was standing there smiling with a tote full of foil pans, paper goods, and napkins like she had every right to be the answer to somebody else's house. Evan said y'all were short on a few things, she said lightly. I was already out, so I grabbed them. She shifted the tote higher and stepped in before Nia had even answered. Dana's whole face changed. Oh good, she said, and the relief in her voice was immediate. Evan looked relieved too, not embarrassed. Relieved. That part hit Nia the hardest, because this was what her no had opened up. Another woman at her front door, smiling soft, carrying the missing pieces. Moving like the space Nia withheld was open territory now. Lacey was already headed toward the kitchen by the time the door closed, and the house took her in like help had finally arrived. Lacey stopped at the counter with the disposable pans balanced in both arms. Where should I put these? She asked. Then she gave that little breathy laugh. I can help plate if you want. Dana was working the stove. Evan hovered near the fridge. All of them looked at Nia like the room still belonged to her to settle. Nia kept moving. Leave it with Evan, she said. Lacey's smile held one beat too long. Oh, okay. Nia did not take a single thing out of her hands. Did not point her toward drawers. Did not step in and perform that easy kitchen sisterhood everybody expects from women. When the air gets tense, she walked right past. Dana's mouth tightened. Evan lost the soft cover he usually got from Nia, making awkward moments feel harmless. And Lacey, still standing there holding those pans, had to be the one visibly out of place. Headlights slid across the front windows. One car door shut, then another. Dana was still working the stove. Lacey was at the counter with those foil pans open. Evan kept looking toward the hallway like he was waiting for the old version of Nia to appear with serving spoons in her hand and that fixed, tired smile already in place. Instead, Nia came back in wearing a simple dress, purse on her shoulder, phone in one hand, ready to be present, not useful. She set her purse beside a chair in the living room and sat down. That was it. No reaching for the door. No last-minute fluffing of pillows. No checking the table. No slipping into the kitchen to steady the room before family crossed the threshold. Dana paused with a dish towel in her hand. Lacey stopped moving for a beat. Evan just stared. Outside, voices started up in the driveway. Nia stayed seated. Every muscle in her body wanted to get up and save the scene. She didn't. The first relatives were coming through the doorway with foil pans and store-bought pie. When Lacey started gathering up her tote, for 1 second, it looked like she understood she had been emergency help and nothing more. Then Dana touched her elbow. Don't rush off, she said. Warm and easy, loud enough for the rivals to hear. Stay. You're already here. And just like that, she turned Lacey back toward the dining room instead of toward the door. It was a tiny move, a hostess hand, a soft voice. But everybody walking in read it the same way. Lacey was not being thanked and sent home. She was being folded into the evening. Evan's shoulders loosened. Nia stayed seated with her purse beside her, fingers tight around the strap. Her own house felt softer under somebody else's shoes, and Dana made that shift look polished, welcoming, almost natural. The living room filled fast, paper plates balanced on knees, little clusters of family talk, a bowl of chips going around. Lacey stayed tucked and easy beside Evan like she'd always had a place in the flow of his house. Garrett took one look at it and grinned. He had a beer bottle hanging loose from one hand, and before he finished the thought, he did what he always did. He checked the room first. Well, he said, dragging it out just enough. Looked like Nia finally got some relief staff. A couple people laughed before they even thought about it. Garrett tipped the bottle toward Lacey, brought in the easy fix for the night. Smart move. Lacey gave a modest little laugh and dipped her head like she hadn't just been handed somebody else's place as a punchline. Evan didn't stop it. A few relatives smiled and looked away. Others just held on to that half-laugh people use when they don't want to be the first one to make something ugly. And then the whole room turned toward Nia, waiting for her to manage it. Nia had a cocktail napkin in her hand. She didn't crumple it, didn't smile either. She looked straight at Garrett. Another woman getting comfortable in my house isn't funny. That was all she said. The laugh died so fast it almost felt loud. Garrett's grin stalled halfway on his face. The beer bottle lowered a little. Lacey's smile went thin and fixed, like she was trying to hold it in place with muscle. Evan's mouth opened, then closed. Nobody had anywhere safe to put their eyes. The room just sat there in it. Nia didn't end a second sentence, didn't explain, didn't soften it for the people who wanted to pretend the joke had been harmless. And right on time, Dana's attention shifted away from Garrett, away from what he had actually done, and landed on Nia instead. Like truth had ruined the mood, the discomfort changed addresses in real time, and everybody in that room felt it. By the time dinner got called, Dana had moved to the table like nothing had happened. Casserole dishes steamed in the middle. Water glasses caught the overhead light. Folded napkins marked out a neat, civilized little map of who belonged where. Dana straightened one place setting, then another, shifted a chair, smoothed the napkin. "Let's put Leon here," she said softly. "It'll be easier for him." Then she turned to Lacey. "Why don't you sit over by Evan?" Like it was the most natural thing in the world. Nia was still standing there when Dana finished the arrangement. And Nia, "Sweetheart, you take that in. You'll be right there with your father if he needs anything." Sweetheart. In her own house, nobody challenged it. Relatives just picked up their glasses and followed the map Dana laid down for them. That was the ugly part. Not loud, not dramatic, just easy. Lacey ended up near Evan. Nia ended up at the far end. Dana made it look like care when it was really rank. And the whole table accepted the chair before Nia ever touched it. The chair at the far end of the table was still there waiting on Nia. Dana had made it look tidy, thoughtful, even. Leon near one end, Evan and Lacey closer to the middle where the easy conversation lived. Nia standing there with every reason to hate what that picture said. Then Leon reached for the table edge, a little uncertain. And that was that. Nia moved to him first. She pulled his chair out so he could sit without twisting wrong, set his cane where he could grab it, put his water by his stronger hand, took his pill case from her bag and laid it beside his plate, before anybody else had even unfolded the napkin. Then she took the end seat. Tinka saw exactly what it cost. Her mouth tightened, but she said nothing. Across the table, the rest of them settled in like Nia being down there made perfect sense. Like of course she'd be the one beside the man who actually needed something. And that was the trap. The table worked because she chose care over optics. And everybody who got the better picture got to call it natural. Dinner loosened into drinks and dessert. And that was when Lacey did something even worse than sitting there. She got up and walked into Nia's kitchen like she already knew it. No asking, no hesitation. Cabinet door, ice, the small clink of good glass. When she came back, she was holding Evan's usual lowball glass. Not just any glass, his glass, and whatever she poured. She got that right too. She set it by his elbow with an easy little smile. Like this was a private habit she already knew how to do in public. Dana noticed and rewarded it with the kind of approving look that made Nia's skin go hot. A couple relatives saw it. You could tell. Their eyes lifted, then dropped right back down to their plates. Nobody said a thing. Evan took the drink. Nia went so still it hurt. She wanted to reach across that table and take the glass right back out of the scene, but she already knew how that would go. The trespass would disappear. Her reaction wouldn't. By the time plates were half cleared, there was a fresh drink sitting in front of Evan in the good lowball glass. Nobody had to explain where it came from. The whole table had seen Lacey drift into Nia's kitchen and come back out easy, smiling, setting it by his hand like she already knew what belonged to him. For a few seconds, people tried to keep eating through it. Forks touched plates, eyes clicked in the glass. Nobody wanted to be first. Then Tanka leaned back and folded her arms. She looked past the drink, past Lacey's little smile, straight at the whole table. Y'all are really letting another woman play wife in here and calling it help. Everything stopped. Leon went still. Evan didn't reach for the glass. Lacey's face tightened around that harmless look she'd been wearing all evening. Dana's expression changed fast, not shocked, just instantly busy, like she was already looking for a way to put the lid back on the room. Nia felt heat rush up her neck. Relief hit first, then embarrassment right behind it, because Tanka had just said the exact thing everybody had been working hard not to hear. Dana did not answer what Tanka said. She reached for the pie. That was her move. She picked up the server, smoothed her face, and started cutting these slices like dessert itself ought to settle everybody back down. Coffee cups got nuts closer. Plates got slid forward. The room was supposed to follow her lead and be civilized again. Lacey has been nothing but gracious, Dana said, in that soft, careful voice of hers. Some people are simply trying to help. We don't need to make everything so heavy. There it was. Not the drink. Not the kitchen. Not another woman moving through Nia's house like she had practice. The heaviness, that became the problem. A few people murmured like that sounded fair. A couple others dropped their eyes to their plates and let Dana build the version they could live with. Evan said nothing. He didn't have to. Dana was already saving the move for him. Nia felt something sink hard in her chest. Being right did not change the room, at least not yet. The pie kept moving. The silence got dressed back up as manners. And somehow the people who named the disrespect were the ones being asked to clean it up. A couple nights later, Nia barely had the car doors shut before Evan was there. The showroom windows were all lit up behind him. Through the glass she could already see people moving around with drinks in their hands. Garrett was inside. Lacey too. Of course she was. Nia shifted her tote higher on her shoulder and reached to lock the car. Evan lowered his voice. If you're still upset about Sunday, you don't have to do this tonight. He said it like he was being considerate, but he had stepped right into her path, not asking how she felt, not saying he wanted her there, just offering her a clean little exit so he could control the room before she touched it. A couple from the far side of the lot were walking up behind them, keys in hand, close enough to clock the whole thing. Nia saw the flick of their eyes. She looked at Evan for one beat, then she stepped around him. I'm here, she said. That was all. She went straight for the doors. Part of her wanted to go home, kick her shoes off, and be done with all of them. But being quietly managed out of another room hit harder than the exhaustion did, so she walked in anyway, with Evan following behind her instead of leading the way. Plastic wine cup in one hand. Garrett spotted Nia before anybody else could pretend not to. They were standing between gleaming countertops and display sinks. All these people from Evan's work balancing drinks and smiling like nothing in the world cost much. Nia had barely cleared the doorway when Garrett lifted his cup and grinned. Well, look who made it. After Sunday, I wasn't sure the Mercer family was gonna survive dinner. He looked around before the last words even settled, checking for the laugh. He got it too. Not a real one. Thin little laughs. Co-workers who had never been in that house smiling because he had already told them how to take it. A couple clients followed along because everybody else did. Nia felt the old reflex rise up anyway. Smile a little, shrink the moment, help everybody move on. She didn't. Lacey stayed close to Evan. Evan gave Garrett that quick amused look men use when they're pretending something mean is just personality. By the time Nia even said hello, the room had already been coached on who she was supposed to be. It got worse a few minutes later. Evan was standing with a small knot of co-workers and one client near a display island, talking with that easy showroom warmth people always rewarded in him. Lacey was right there in reach, stemless glass in one hand, smiling like she belonged in every part of his story. Nia was close enough to hear him when he said it. Honestly, Lacey saved us Sunday, Evan said, resting a light hand at the middle of her back. She jumped in and kept the whole thing from going off the rails. Lacey let out that modest little laugh like she hadn't been waiting to be described that way. The group loved it. Somebody said how sweet that was. Another person laughed about everybody needing a Lacey around. And just like that, the version of events settled. Nia became the wife-shaped gap in the story. The difficult absence, the space that let a sweeter woman glow. Evan had taken what Nia withheld to protect herself and turned it into another woman's virtue in public. Nia kept her face still, but the hurt rose hot and fast. He wasn't just accepting help. He was building social credit out of her erasure. A little later, Evan was near one of the display islands, smiling that showroom smile, telling a knot of co-workers how Lacey had stepped in and saved Sunday. Lacey gave that modest little laugh and let him hand her the shine. Nia did not interrupt. She did not stand there and lend her face to it either. Her toe was hanging off the back of a stool where she'd set it down. She took it, hooked the strap over her shoulder, and put her untouched drink on the nearest counter. Nobody in that circle stopped talking. Nobody said, "Wait." She walked past bright white cabinets, brass fixtures, staged fruit bowls. All that fake kitchen warm, polished enough to make ugly behavior look civilized. Behind her, Garrett laughed again. Lacey was still beside Evan. The whole room kept breathing easy around a story that only worked if Nia stayed small inside it. Evan noticed when she was already halfway to the door. By then, it was done. Nia left before anybody could ask her to make that room feel comfortable again. Loose receipts were sticking out of a fat ledger binder when Rochelle dropped it on the desk. The client had that strained, over-talking energy of somebody hoping charm could outrun a mess. Wrinkled envelopes, coffee smell, too many explanations before anybody had asked for one. The office assistant was hovering by the printer, waiting to see who Rochelle would hand him to. Rochelle didn't pause. "Nia's got you," she said, sliding the binder her way. "She'll tell you what can be fixed and what still needs to come in." That was all. No making her sound like extra help. No translating her through anybody else. The client turned toward Nia. So did the assistant. Rochelle moved on like the matter was already settled. Because to her it was. Nia had come in tired, shoulders still tight from the night before. For 1 second, habit almost made her say she could assist or take a look. Instead, she pulled out the chair and sat down. The heavy toad at her feet did not make her look overloaded in this room. It made her look prepared, and just like that, everybody waited on her. Most of the receipts weren't sorted at all. They were just shoved together with bank printouts, duplicate invoices, and a few loose slips that didn't match anything. The man leaned back and tried to smile. "I know it's ugly, but that's why I brought it in. I figured you could work your magic." Nia didn't smile back. She pulled one stack loose, saw the gap, and slid the whole pile right back across the desk. "I need the deposit slips for these dates first." He blinked. "Can't you just start with what I've got?" "No." She said it flat and let it sit there. He tried again, softer this time, talking around the numbers like maybe she would get tired of holding the line and clean it up for him anyway. Nia kept one hand on the file and waited across the room. Rochelle kept working. The assistant got quiet. The man's tone changed before his face did. He leaned forward, patted one coat pocket, then the inside pocket. A folded wad of missing deposit slips came out at last. He laid them on the desk. Only then did Nia pull the file back toward herself and begin. The signing clipboard slapped the counter, and the man who came and barely waited for the receptionist to look up. "Is Nia here?" Not Rochelle, not whoever was free. Nia. Phones were ringing. Folders were changing hands. He still stood there scanning past everybody else until he found her with a file, tucked against her side. The tension in his face eased the second he did. "If she's got room, I want her handling my books again." Rochelle heard that from the back desk. The office assistant heard it too. Nobody had to explain Nia to him. He had already been helped once, and he had come back looking for the same person. The words landed harder than they should have. In a good way. In a sore way. At home, people reached for Nia like she was part of the furniture. Here, somebody came in asking for her because her work had been worth remembering. She stepped forward, and he turned toward her like the right person had finally walked into the room. The coffee on Rochelle's desk had gone cold by the time the last client left. Folders were stacked. The office had finally gone quiet. Nia had one hand on her toe strap when Rochelle said, "Hold up." She sat back down. Rochelle opened a drawer, took out a key, and slid it across the desk. Just like that. No long speech around it. "I need more than seasonal help from you," she said, More clients, more hours, more money. Some mornings, you'll open up for me. Some days, you'll run things till I get in. Nia looked at the key lying there between them. In a small office like Rochelle's, keys meant trust. Alarm code. First one in, last one out. Somebody whose judgment did not need babysitting. Rochelle didn't tell her to dream bigger. She didn't flatter her into courage. She talked to Nia like a woman who was already carrying real weight. When Nia picked the key up, it sat heavier in her palm than it looked. Not because it was metal, because it was real. The office was almost closed when Nia clipped the key onto her ring and pulled Leon's appointment card closer beside the open calendar. She still had her work clothes on. Her shoulders ached. The transport line was about to shut down for the evening, so she called. "I need a standing pickup," she said, already reaching for her card. Same address, weekly, morning window. Tinka was on speaker with Leon, listening from the other end. Nia gave the information cleanly, answered the timing questions, and read off her card number before anybody could start that old family scramble about who might be able to leave work early this time. Leon made a soft sound in the background. "Baby, that costs money." "I know," Nia said. Tinka didn't miss the shift. "Good," said it. Nia did. The charge made her swallow anyway. Spending for relief still felt strange in her body, even now. But when the scheduler confirmed the recurring rides, something in the room settled. Rochelle kept closing out the day without interrupting. She heard it too. Nia hadn't asked permission. She had just ended the problem. The waiting chair outside the front desk was empty when Evan came in. He had that same polished showroom look he always wore into other people's spaces, like Charmant to shorten the distance between him and whatever he wanted. He smiled at the receptionist and asked if Nia had a minute. The receptionist checked the door behind her, then checked the schedule. "She's with a client right now," she said. "If you'd like to wait, she'll get to you when she's free." That was it. No special tone, no spouse pass, no quick trip to the back to pull Nia out of her work day. A man in the next chair looked up once, then went back to his phone. Evan glanced toward the closed consultation door like maybe it would open anyway. It didn't. Inside, Nia heard his name through the wall. Her pen paused over the page for one beat. Then she asked her client to repeat a number and kept going. Outside, Evan sat down in the same chair anybody else would have used. For once, his place in her day was the waiting room. The folder touched the counter before Nia had fully stepped out of the consultation room. Evan stood up fast. "Can you just take a quick look at something for me? One of my showroom contacts has a payroll mess. It won't take long." He held the folder out like he expected her hands to close around it on reflex. They didn't. Nia reached past the folder, took an office card and intake form from the front desk, and placed them against his chest instead. "If he wants me to look at it, have him call the office," she said. "We'll book it properly." The receptionist went very quiet, without pretending not to hear. Evan looked down at the card, then back at her. "Nia, it's just a favor. It's work." She kept her voice even. That was the part he never wanted named. For a second, the old tugged at her. Make it easy, in the awkwardness. Keep the piece moving. She left the card in his hand anyway. He had come for access. What he got was process. The office card was still in Evan's hand when he said, "Let me just call him," before Nia could answer. He had his showroom contact on speaker, phone flat on Rochelle's front counter between them. "Yeah, I've got my wife here," he said. "She can probably just look it over and tell you what you're dealing with." Rochelle stepped in smooth and cool. "This is Rochelle Price," she said, "and you're speaking about Nia Bennett. She handles payroll, bookkeeping cleanup, and tax review here. If you'd like her to take this on, we'll need your intake and your documents through the office." The receptionist's typing slowed. Evan went quiet. On speaker, the man's whole tone changed. The buddy eavesdropped right out of it. "Okay, Miss Bennett, what do you need from me?" Nia felt that old reflex pull at her, the one that wanted to laugh something off and make the room easier. She didn't. She let her own name sit there, full and correct. While Evan stood off to the side still holding the card he thought would have opened a private door. The Saturday clinic binder did not go on the general pile. End of day had the office looking half packed and half busy. Sign-up sheets were spread across the front desk. Somebody was breaking down folding tables for next weekend. The junior preparer was sorting pens into a box. Everybody was still moving when Rochelle picked up the binder and walked it straight over to Nia. Then she said it in front of her. "I want you leading the Saturday clinic," Rochelle said. Not helping, not filling in, leading. The room shifted around that one sentence. The office assistant stopped what she was doing. The junior preparer looked up. Nobody treated it like a compliment tossed into the air. They looked at Nia like an answer was actually needed. Nia rested her fingertips on the binder without opening it. Weekend work had always been something she squeezed around everybody else's claims on her. This was different. This had shape, weight, respect, and that was the part that scared her. Rochelle didn't soften the offer or take it back. She just left the binder there and waited. By the time the staff cleared out, the Saturday clinic schedule was still lying open on Rochelle's desk. The office had gone still. No phones, no clients, just Rochelle waiting. And somewhere inside Nia's tote, her phone buzzing once against a folder and then going quiet again. Rochelle tapped the top line. If you want it, take it. Her weekends had always been the first thing other people spent for themselves. Family dinners, errands, care runs, somebody else's last-minute need. Nia pulled the schedule closer. "I'll take it," she said. She wrote her name where the lead slot sat empty. Then she clipped the office key onto her own ring and listened to that small metal click. Rochelle didn't make a speech out of it. She just nodded once. Like this answer belonged to Nia already, that almost made it harder. Her stomach dropped anyway, good and frightening at the same time. But when she looked down again, her name was still there, and now Saturday had somewhere else to go. The insulated pharmacy bag was still sitting on the counter when Nia came into the kitchen. Before daylight, next to it sat the grocery tote, Leon's pill bag, and a notepad with nothing written on it. Usually by now the list would already be made. Refill card out, store order settled. All the little things nobody called little because she did them before anybody noticed. Evan came in rubbing sleep from his eyes and looked straight at the counter. "What did you set out for your dad's run? Now can you still help? Now what do you need from me? What did you set out?" Nia slid the clinic binder into her tote and picked up her keys. "I didn't." He stood there waiting for the rest of it. The explanation, the backup plan, the point where she would turn and touch the bags and make the morning normal again. She didn't touch any of it. Her chest pulled tight because Leon was tied up in this, and that mattered. But she walked to the door anyway. When it shut behind her, Evan was still in the kitchen staring at the routine like it had failed him. By 9 o'clock the folding tables were full. People sat with envelopes split open. W to South halfway out, reading glasses low on their noses. Somebody's Annie had a grocery cart parked by the wall. A man near the front kept smoothing the same wrinkled receipt while he waited his turn. Nia's phone would not stop vibrating beside her calculator. Evan. Again. Then again. When she finally glanced down, his messages were stripped down to basics. Where's the pharmacy card? What cereal does he eat? Which pills at lunch? Questions that should not have needed her from across town. Her pulse jumped anyway. Leon's face flashed through her mind. She could have stepped out, could have answered in 2 minutes, could have fed Evan the whole day line by line. Instead, she turned the phone face down on top of the clinic binder. "Okay," she said to the woman across from her. "Let's start with your income." Rochelle looked up once and kept moving. The calls kept coming. Nia kept the room going. The wrong cereal box was sticking out of the grocery bag when Tanka stepped into Leon's apartment. One cabinet door was hanging open. Leon was at the table, tired already, with no lunch in front of him and no pills set out beside the plate that wasn't there yet. Evan stood in the middle of the kitchen turning slow. Like the room might answer for him, "Mr. Bennett, which pharmacy does Nia usually use for the refill?" Leon looked up at him. Then Evan lifted the box a little. "And is this the cereal he eats?" Tinka stopped right there in the doorway. She didn't have to raise her voice. The look on her face did enough. Leon's mouth tightened. Evan tried to make it sound like he was just double-checking. But that was the problem. He was asking the kind of questions a person asked when somebody else had always done the whole run. Before the day really started, Tinka set her bag down slow. "You don't know his cereal?" Evan didn't have anywhere to look but the bag in his hand. The tax posters in the hallway were curling at the corners. Nia stood under the fluorescent light with the clinic binder pressed to her chest, and Dana's voice coming careful and sharp through speakerphone. "This is getting upsetting," Dana said. "Your father is unsettled. Evan is trying. You need to come straighten this out." Inside the room behind her, chairs scraped and somebody coughed into the waiting silence. Dana was not asking what Nia could handle. She was asking her to leave paid work. Leave the people sitting there for help, and come clean up the scene around Evan before his embarrassment settled into the truth. Nia swallowed once. Her throat tightened anyway. The clinic stays open. She said, if your son needs help, then help your son. Rochelle was just inside the doorway with a file in her hand. She heard enough, said nothing. For one beat, Dana had no soft answer ready. Nia ended the call before that silence could turn into guilt, then went back into the room where people had been waiting on her. Dana had already plated the lunch like that was the hard part. Turkey sandwich, apple slices, glass of water. She carried it over with that soft, organized tone she used when she wanted a room to settle down around her. Let's get some food in you first. Leon didn't reach for the plate. He looked at the table instead. The orange bottle sitting there was empty. Where's the refill? Dana held the plate in midair. Evan looked at her. She looked at him. Leon stayed where he was. I can't take lunch without it. That was it. No shouting. No scene anybody could call dramatic. Just the plain little rule Nia never had to explain because she handled it before it became a problem. Tinka stood by the counter with her arms folded, watching all that dry up the second actual care was required. Dana could manage voice. She could manage posture. She could not answer the empty bottle on the table, and Evan had nowhere to hide from that. The kitchen went quiet in that ugly way it does when everybody runs out of pretending. Dana finally set the plate down. Evan turned the empty bottle in his hand like the label might rescue him if he stared at it long enough. Leon tapped his cane once the floor. Call Nia. Nobody moved. He looked straight at Evan this time. She's the one who knows which one goes with lunch. She knows my times. She knows what I need. There wasn't any heat on it. That made it land harder. Just plain truth from a man too tired to protect anybody's pride. Evan stood there with the bottle. Dana had nowhere to tuck herself behind good manners. Tinka didn't say a word. Her face said she'd been waiting for somebody else to admit what she'd already seen. Nia wasn't even in the apartment, and still every unanswered thing in that kitchen pointed back to her. The folding chairs were still stacked in the hallway when Nia got home that night. Disposable pans sat on the counter. Open mail had spread across the table. A tied trash bag leaned by the back door, still not taken out. The whole house looked half-finished, like somebody kept expecting another person to come in and complete the thought. Nia still had her clinic bag on her shoulder. Evan looked up the second she stepped inside, not at her face, at her hands, like the room was about to restart now that she was back in it. He gestured toward the mess. Can we at least knock this out tonight? She slipped off her shoes, set her bag by the wall, picked up fresh clothes from the chair. No answer. He waited for the old reflex, for her to start stacking, wiping, sorting, making the place feel normal again. She walked right past the chairs, past the mail, past him. Sleeping in disorder got under her skin. Every part of her wanted the relief of fixing it, but cleaning it now would have felt like lying. When the bathroom door shut, Evan was still standing there with the house around him. A low balance alert sat at the top of Nia's phone while the coffee cooled between them. Keys, 2 mugs, the fridge full of reminders. Monday was doing what Mondays did in that house, making every little thing feel tied to every other little thing. Evan came around the island buttoning his cuff. Can you move some money over? Just till my commission hits. I need to cover something for a client this morning. He said it like he was asking her to pass a napkin. Nia looked at the screen one more time, then closed the banking app with her thumb. He reached a little, not quite for the phone, more for the easy yes he was used to. She pulled the phone back into her own hand. No. He blinked. Nia, it's temporary. I said no. It still felt colder in her mouth than it ever had in his hands. But she kept the phone where it was. The coffee maker clicked off. Evan stood there, suddenly short on time. Understanding her money was not part of his automatic rescue plan anymore. The tray was already loaded by the time Evan reached the register. The coffees, pastries folded into a white paper bag. A client standing beside him ready to head to the showroom. Lacey waiting with a drink carrier, easy smile already in place. Evan tapped his card against the machine like the whole morning was on schedule. The terminal flashed and gave it back. He tried again. Same thing. For 1 second, he kept the smile on anyway. Can you run that one more time? The cashier did. Nothing. Lacey went very still beside him. The client turned toward the pastry case like he wasn't watching. But now he had to wade through it. That was the part that mattered. Not the coffee, not the few dollars, the pause, the little crack in the smooth version of Evan that usually never had to show up in public. He patted his pockets, checked his phone, reached for another card to late. The easy rhythm was gone, and Nia wasn't there to make any of it disappear. A crumpled coffee receipt hit the counter and skidded toward the sink. Nia was still in her work clothes, standing there with her shoulders tight, too tired to act confused about what kind of night this was. Evan looked scraped thin, the way he did when something had gone wrong in public and he needed someplace private to drop it. My card declined in front of a client. He said, "You could have helped me for one morning." He wanted the whole day to flatten into that. Not his asking, not her boundary, just the part where he got embarrassed. Nia kept both hands on the edge of the sink. "I didn't make you look stupid," she said. He let out a breath that tried to turn into a laugh and didn't. "Come on." Her eyes burned anyway. Her voice came out thinner than she wanted. "I'm done using my money to keep your image together. And I'm done doing the rest of it too. The planning, the catching, the fixing things before anybody notices. I'm not doing that anymore." The receipt stayed between them, small and ugly. There was nobody else there to soften it for him. He just had to hear her. The fridge calendar was crowded with ink, shift times, appointments. The clinic, little boxes full of a life that never really fit inside the squares meant for it. Dana's voice was coming through speakerphone, moving briskly through Leon's next follow-up like Nia's Saturday was still family property. Evan had the marker in his hand. "We can put Leon here," he said, already writing into her Saturday box. Nia stepped in and took the marker out of his fingers before he finished the line. He looked up at her. She put the tip to the calendar and wrote straight across the whole square in thick black letters, "Clinic." Her hand shook a little, but she kept going until there was no room left to misunderstand it. "I'm at the clinic Saturday," she said, "schedule around it." Dana went quiet on speaker. Evan stared at the calendar like maybe the word would shrink if he waited long enough. It didn't. The call kept going, but the ease was gone. Dana started again in a tighter voice. "All right, then what about after the appointment? Who's doing lunch? Who's picking up the refill? What time is the ride supposed to come?" Evan stayed by the fridge, looking at that blacked out Saturday square like it had insulted him personally. On the line, even Leon and Tanka were quiet for a second, waiting for the same thing everybody always waited for. Nia, the rest of the plan, the part where she gathered up every loose end before it could touch anybody else. She kept her eyes on the calendar. "The transport is already booked," she said, and she stopped there. Dana waited. Evan waited. The speakerphone stayed open long enough for the silence to turn awkward, then heavy. Nia could feel the old reflex rising fast. Explain it. Finish it. Save the call. She didn't. The whole kitchen had to sit inside the gap she used to erase. The transport van was idling at the red curb, driver half out the window, while Leon sat in his wheelchair with the folded ride paperwork clipped to the arm. Dana was already doing that soft smoothing thing with her voice. Evan stepped forward like he had it. "Yeah, just bring him through the front." Nia looked once at the van, once at Leon, and cut across him. "No, stroke transport loads at the side access door." "Not here." She was already unlocking the wheelchair brakes. The driver nodded at her, pulled away from the wrong curb, and started circling without another question. Tanka moved with Nia. Dana followed too. Leon's chair rolled toward the side entrance because Nia's hands were on it and Nia knew. Evan stayed back near the curb, still talking, but nobody waited for his version to finish before they moved. The doctor came in with Leon's chart tucked against her side and started asking the usual follow-up questions. How had his lunch timing been? Was the refill problem straightened out? Who was keeping track of changes in appetite, balance, and medication? Her eyes went to Evan first for one brief beat, the way people often did when a man was standing there ready to summarize. Leon reached into his wallet, pulled out his medication card, and said, plain as daylight, "Ask Nia." That shifted the whole room. The doctor turned to her. Nia took the card and answered. She corrected the timing on one pill, explained what had to go with lunch, explained what they were watching day to day. The doctor wrote while Nia talked. Dana got still. Evan didn't jump in. There wasn't much he could do with smoothness once Leon had pointed to the right person. By the end, the doctor was speaking straight to Nia about follow-through and next steps. When she asked the last question, she didn't glance back at Evan at all. At the pharmacy, the line was back past the greeting cards and cough drops. Leon's orange pill bottle sat on the counter while the pharmacist frowned at the screen. "I need to confirm the dosage and whether this is the refill tied to the lunch schedule." Dana opened her mouth first, then stopped. She looked at the label in her hand. Then across the counter at Nia. Nia, which one is it? It was a small sentence. It landed big. Evan heard it. So did Tamka, who didn't bother hiding the way her face shifted. Nia stepped up, gave the dosage, the timing, the refill note, and the pharmacist turned back to the computer like the answer had come from the only person who could be trusted with it. Dana didn't correct, didn't smooth. She just held the bottle a little tighter and let Nia's answer stand there in public. Leon's building community room smelled like coffee and copier paper. Folding tables were lined with tax folders, pens on strings, and older folks clutching envelopes thick with W to South and Social Security forms. Dana and Evan came in carrying the morning with them, still arranged in their usual positions, until Rochelle cut straight through it. She crossed the room, put the sign-in binder into Nia's hands, and said, "Morning, everybody. This is Nia Bennett. She's leading today's senior session. So if you've got questions, start with her." Then she turned the first resident toward Nia, without even glancing at Evan. An older man lifted his envelope and asked where to begin. Bodies shifted, chairs scraped, faces went to Nia. Leon settled back in his seat like something in him could finally unclench. Tamka watched with her arms folded. Dana said nothing. Evan smiled. But it wasn't center of the room smiling anymore. It was adjustment. The room had already decided who it needed. By the time the last few folders were closing, nobody was rushing out. Seniors lingered at the tables comparing notes, asking each other if they brought every paper they needed. The building coordinator came over with the community calendar open in both hands. Two residents drifted right behind her like they wanted the answer too. "Ms. Bennett, people are already asking when you're coming back," she said. "Can I put you down for next month?" She said it to Nia, not to Evan, not around her, straight to her. One woman nearby nodded and said Nia had explained things clearer than anybody ever had. Another asked if her sister could come next time. Leon sat there quiet, pleased in a way that showed all over his face. Dana heard every word. Evan did too, and while they stood there, other people started planning their month around Nia's time, like it was something worth reserving. The beer bottle knocked softly against Garrett's knee when he leaned back and tried to get the room loose again. There were leftovers still on the coffee table, the folding chairs half stacked near the wall, and Leon resting off to one side while everybody else sat in that worn-out after-dinner quiet. Garrett looked around like he could still drag them back to the old version of things. He grinned and said, "Y'all better behave before Nia starts billing family by the hour." That used to work for him. Dana looked down at her plate. Evan started to smile and stalled out halfway through it. Tamka didn't help. She stayed folded up in her chair and let the silence do exactly what it was doing. Nia just looked at Garrett. No smile. No saving him. He took a sip like maybe the line only needed a second. It didn't. The joke sat there by itself, flat and ugly, and for once nobody lifted it off him. The room stayed quiet after that, so the conversation slipped where it could no longer hide. Leon's next appointment card was sitting on the coffee table beside a folded napkin and somebody's keys. Garrett glanced at it and asked, "So who's got him next week?" Evan started answering before the last word was out. Dana cut across him, not loud, just firm enough to stop the air. She looked past her son and said, "Nia already set that up." For a second nobody moved, then the whole room turned the same way, toward Nia. Garrett heard it, Tamka heard it, Evan did too. The woman who used to talk around Nia had just sent the truth straight through her. Nia felt the old reflex rise, that habit of making herself sound smaller so other people could stay comfortable. She let it pass. "Transport's booked," she said. "Pickup window is between 10 and 10:30. Refills already handled." Nobody asked Evan to finish. The doorbell came late enough to feel like an intrusion. When Evan opened it, Lacey was standing there with a bakery tote hanging from her wrist, paper napkins tucked at the top, bright smile already arranged on her face. She stepped just inside the doorway with that same airy ease she'd been getting away with for too long. "I brought dessert," she said. Then she glanced toward Leon and added, "Softer, and if somebody needs help with his next errand, or picking something up for him, I can do that too." A month ago, Dina would have swept that offer right into the family like it was a blessing. Evan would have helped her do it. Nobody moved, not Dana, not Garrett, not Evan. The pause stretched, and the whole room turned toward Nia without anybody saying her name. Lacey felt it. Her smile stayed on, but it tightened around the edges. Nia didn't get up. "Transport's already handled," she said. That was it. Lacey stood there with the toast still in her hand, waiting for a welcome that never came. The fridge calendar was visible straight from the living room. Black marker filling up Saturday squares and appointment boxes like facts nobody could talk around. Leon's next few weeks were spread across the room in bits and pieces. Ride times, refills. Who could cover what before the work week swallowed everybody again? Evan tried to gather it back under his voice. We can just keep it flexible and make sure. Nia cut across him. No, Leon's transport is set. Saturdays stay with the clinic. If something else comes up, ask me what I can actually take. Don't decide at first. Her hand stayed wrapped around the back of the chair beside her. Tinka nodded once. That's the plan. Leon said, works for me. Dana picked it up next. All right. Transport is covered. Saturdays are hers. Anything else, we ask. And that became the language of the room. Evan tried once more to soften it, but nobody followed him. Even the quiet people settled around Nia's terms like they were the only version, connected to real life. That night, the spare room stopped being spare. Nia carried her clinic binder in first, then her toiletries, then folded clothes from the dresser, one stack at a time. Her office key clicked against the ring every trip she made down the hall. Evan stayed near the bedroom doorway watching the shape of the house change without him. She sprayed clean night clothes across the guest bed, set her charger on the small table, and lined up what she needed for morning. The last shirt trembled a little in her hands before she folded it flat. Nia, Evan said. She kept moving. You don't have to do this. That made her pause, but only long enough to put the shirt down with the rest. Then she laid her key ring and binder on the made bed like they belonged there. When she came back with the final armful, she stepped inside, pulled the door shut, and left him standing in the hallway outside a room that was now hers. The guest room door was open just enough for Evan to stop there and look in like the old rules. Still meant something. Nia was buttoning her blouse with one hand and holding the knob with the other. Her work tote was by her feet. She hadn't even had coffee yet. Can I come in? He asked. We need to talk. He said it gently, like gentle ought to get him past the doorway. Nia didn't step back. Not right now. Please, Nia. Her chest pulled tight at that. For a second, being understood sounded close to relief, but relief had cost her too much already. She kept her hand on the knob. We can talk later about the house and logistics, not before work. He stood there waiting for more, for the opening he used to get just by showing up. It never came. Nia gave him one steady look and closed the door. He stayed in the hallway, outside a room he could no longer enter because he felt like it. The fridge calendar was crowded with black marker, clinic on Saturday, Leon's follow-up, pharmacy note, a life with edges. Nia stood in front of it with a coffee mug warm in her palm, while Dana's voice came through the speakerphone on the counter, and for the first time, Dana sounded careful. Nia, she said, would you be able to do the pickup on Tuesday? Or should I find somebody else for that part? Not a decision, not an assignment, a question, across the counter. Evan went quiet with his own mug halfway raised. Nia almost gave more than she meant to. She could feel the old answer trying to rise up in her. All the extra pieces, all the ways she could make the rest of the week easier for everybody. She stopped it. I can do the pickup, she said. That's what I can take. Dana didn't push past it. All right, I'll cover the rest. Nia looked back at the calendar. Her square stayed hers, and Evan had to hear his mother ask instead of assume. The building coordinator smoothed a fresh flyer onto the lobby bulletin board and pressed in the last thumbtack with her thumbnail. Nia saw her own name before anything else. Nia Bennett, printed clean across the top above the date for next month's senior tax session. Residents were drifting through the lobby with grocery carts, church flyers, little folding shopping bags. One older woman stopped, leaned in close to read it, and smiled. Oh good, Miss Bennett's coming back. The coordinator looked over her shoulder. That day still works for you, Nia. Nia took a second before answering. Yes, that's fine. Leon was sitting nearby with his cane across his lap. A pride came over his face so plain it almost made her look away. Dana stood beside him and had to watch people greet Nia from the board itself. Not through marriage, not through family, just from the work. Another resident tapped the flyer and said, I'll tell my sister to come next time. Miss Bennett. Nia nodded, still looking at her own name like it had finally been given room to stand there by itself. Garrett was sitting in Rochelle's front office with a clipboard on his knee. That alone made Nia slow down. The waiting chairs were lined up against the wall, Phones were ringing at the desk, and the receptionist had handed him an intake form the same way she would hand one to anybody else. Name, business, best contact number, what services he needed. No grin was getting him around any of it. He was halfway through filling it out when Nia came through from the back with a file in her hand. His posture changed before his face did. Less spread out, less short. Hey, he said, careful now. Nia didn't stop walking. Reception will get you scheduled. That was all she gave him. He nodded and looked back down at the clipboard. No joke. No little crowd playing line. Just Garrett Sloan, pen in hand, filling in blanks so he could wait for her time like every other person in that office. The knock came late in the afternoon when Nia opened the door. Lacey was standing on the porch with a casserole tote looped over her arm and paper napkins sticking out of the side pocket. Her smile was softer than usual, arranged with care. Hey, she said, I was nearby. I just wanted to drop this off and check on Leon. Nia kept one hand on the door and left the opening small. She didn't step back, didn't shift her body an inch. Behind her, farther inside the house, Evan was visible for a moment. He didn't come forward. He didn't widen anything. Thank you, Nia said. You can leave it with me. Lacey held onto the tote a second longer. Like politeness might still turn into entry if she waited. It didn't. Nia took the dish, nothing else. The smile on Lacey's face tightened just a little around the edges. Porch stayed porch, house stayed house. Nia said goodbye and kept the threshold exactly where it belonged. The coffee urn was already humming at the back table, and Dana was straightening the stack of sign-in sheets when one of Leon's neighbors came over smiling. Who do I need to thank for all this? She asked. Who runs it? A question like that used to slide right past Nia. She felt it before she even looked up. Dana turned, fully, toward her. That's Nia Bennett, she said. She's the one leading today, and she's the one who keeps Leon's logistics together. The neighbor shifted right to Nia and held out her hand. Well, thank you, Miss Bennett. We appreciate you. Rochelle heard it from across the room and let it stand. Leon sat nearby with his cane across his knees, quiet and watchful. Nia had one hand resting on the sign-in sheets. She smoothed the corner once because her fingers needed somewhere to go. The introduction was so simple, it almost hurt. Dana could have said her name like that all along, but this morning she did, and Nia's full name stayed in the room exactly the way it was said. By the time the senior session was over, the office had gone quiet in that end-of-day way. Files stacked, coffee turned lukewarm, one printer still humming somewhere in the back. Rochelle came out holding a small nameplate and set it on the desk in front of Nia. Nia Bennett, not another seasonal folder, not another pile to help with when tax season got crazy. Rochelle rested her hand on the desk. I want you here year-round, she said. Associate role, your own desk, recurring clients, not just overflow when things get busy. Nia didn't answer right away. Her breathing turned uneven so fast it irritated her. From the next room, the office assistant heard enough and called out, You want me to clear the window desk? Rochelle kept her eyes on Nia. Yes, that was how real it was. Nia looked down at the nameplate and had to steady her hand against the desk, because wanting it that much meant she already knew how much of her old life no longer fit. The office was still quiet enough to hear the little buzz from the front sign. Rochelle had left the nameplate on the desk the day before. Nia stood over it with both hands wrapped around the edges, reading the clean block letters like they belonged to somebody steadier. Then she felt that early in the morning. Nia Bennett. She set it down anyway. Then she laid her keys beside it, clipped the office key loose from the rest of the ring, and slid her tote under the desk instead of keeping it on her shoulder, like she was only there to help for a season. Rochelle came out with a coffee cup in one hand and stopped when she saw the desk. You decided. Nia nodded. Her throat was tight. Yeah, I want the year-round role. Rochelle didn't make a speech out of it. Good. Then start using the space. She set a neat stack of client files on the desk and kept moving. That almost got Nia more than praise would have. This desk, this nameplate, this ordinary answer. It was the first place in a long time being arranged around her instead of around what everybody else wanted from her. An untouched dinner plate sat at the far end of the counter, like somebody had planned for a normal night in mist. Evan stayed on the other side of the kitchen table. No smile, no easy shrug, no polished little laugh to take the weight off himself. Nia didn't help him. He looked down once, then back at her. I talked over you, a lot. She said nothing. I let people think I was carrying things you were carrying. The house, your dad, the bills, all of it. He swallowed. I reached for your money like it was mine to use. I expected your planning to be there before I even asked for it. His voice got quieter, and when people crossed lines with you, I let it happen. I let my mother rank you lower in your own house. I let Garrett make you the joke. I let Lacey act like your place was open. Then I turned around and made you sound difficult for not accepting it. The room stayed still after that. Nia held the back of a chair so hard her hand hurt. Hearing it plain should have felt clean. Instead it landed slow and painful, because every word confirmed she had never imagined any of it. Evan looked at her and said, "I'm sorry." This time he didn't sound misunderstood. He sounded guilty. Nia opened the junk drawer, took out the spare house key, and set it on the table between them. Metal clicked against wood. Small sound. Hard one. Evan looked at the key, then up at her. Nia kept both hands on her own side of the table. "I heard what you said." Her voice thinned for a second, and she steadied it. "But that doesn't reopen anything." He started to answer. She didn't let him get ahead of her. "You do not get my time because you finally told the truth. You do not get my body. You do not get me calming this for you anymore." He went very still. "If you need to talk to me, it's about the house, the mortgage, my father. That's it." The words sounded painfully ordinary. Bills, care, keys, adult things. But that was the whole point. She was not giving late honesty the power to turn into access. Evan's face shifted like he was only now understanding that saying the right thing did not put him back inside her life. Nia left the key where it was. It wasn't an invitation. It was logistics. By morning, Dana's car was idling at the curb. Evan came out with an overnight bag in one hand and a smaller tote over his shoulder. The kind of leaving that could look temporary from the street, even when everybody standing there knew better. Nia stayed in the doorway with her own keys curled in her palm. Dana got out, opened the trunk, and waited. She didn't come up the walk. She didn't offer one of those careful little sentences that really blamed somebody else. She just held the trunk and let her son put his bag inside. Evan looked back once. Nia didn't step off the porch, didn't go to him, didn't make the moment easier or uglier than it already was. He shut the trunk. Dana went back around to the driver's seat. A minute later, he was in the car too. Watching him go still hit her low in the chest. Shared years did not vanish just because she had finally told the truth about them. But the hurt wasn't confusing anymore. The car pulled away, and Nia stayed where she was, keys warm in her hand. Standing in the doorway of the house she had been holding together, her key turned clean in the lock beneath the flyer with her full name on it. By the time Nia pushed the community room door open, the coffee was already warming in the big urn and the folding chairs were stacked. Where she wanted them, she set her tote down, laid out the folders in order, and placed the sign-in sheet at the end of the table. The building coordinator came in behind her carrying coffee sleeves and extra pens. "You need anything else, Nia?" "I'm good," Nia said. People started arriving before the building was fully awake. "Morning, Miss Bennett." One of the residents called from the hallway. Nia looked up. "Morning. Come on in." Leon came through a few minutes later in the transport she had arranged. Steady and on time. Dana walked in behind him and waited while Nia showed the driver where to bring him. Tanka came through with her work badge still clipped on and gave Nia a look. That said she saw exactly what this was. Nobody had to clear space for Nia now. Nobody had to translate her. The room already knew who it was moving around. She picked up the first folder, and everybody there waited for her to begin. This story stayed with me because it felt like one of those late voice notes from somebody who'd been carrying too much for too long. That kind of tiredness that comes from holding a whole life and still getting treated like background in your own home. What I can't shake is how quiet Nia's power really was. She didn't need a big speech. She just stopped carrying what was never supposed to be hers alone. And the truth got loud on its own. If this one hit home, tell me what part stayed with you. Or tell me about the moment you got tired of being the one everybody leaned on while acting like it was just your job.